This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We've been talking this week about a rise in tensions in our community in the weeks since the conflict between Israel and Hamas began. A Tunisian family in Winnipeg says their 11-year-old girl was harassed last weekend by a female police officer during a pro-Palestinian car rally. CBC's Zubina Ahmed reports.
From the river to the sea! From the river to the sea!
Palestinian flags and support for those in Gaza. The local community has been rallying every weekend for the past month. The most recent protests on Saturday started at Portage and Maine. Among the protesters was Salma Jabara and her 11-year-old niece. The protest turned into a car rally.
I sat on the window of the car because all of us were. There was somebody who was driving and everyone who was protesting. There were kids on trucks, on roofs. They were all yelling, "Free Palestine."
Jabara says with her mom and niece, they took part riding in her friend's car. When they turned off Osborne onto Pembina, they saw police lights and were pulled over.
The female came to my window. She started yelling. She started using big, vulgar words, wasn't nice words. And mind you, my niece, 11-year-old niece, she was sitting behind me in the car. When she first came out of the police car, I still had the Palestinian flag outside the window. She told me to take that shit flag away.
Jabara says she asked the police officer to not use that language in front of her niece and asked for her badge number. She says the officer threatened to call child services.
My niece didn't know what that was at first, but then she asked her, she said, "That's Child Protective Services. They can take you away from your family."
Jabara says they were not told why they were pulled over. The female police officer issued a $298 ticket to both Jabara and her friend who was driving for not wearing seat belts. She says her friend was also given a ticket for not using her signal light.
She gave me $300 and told me that she could have given me more tickets. She told me that if there wasn't a child here, I could have given you a lot more.
The Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba President Ramsey Zeid says it is very troubling to hear of such incidents and hopes this is an isolated case.
We hope that it's a one-off. It's not a common thing with the Winnipeg Police Department. They have been very good with us, very supportive, very accommodating and understanding. And we are aware of that there is an investigation right now. So we're just waiting to see what comes of that.
Jabara says she has filed a hate crime report with the police online and her sister has filed for Manitoba's Law Enforcement Review Agency. The Winnipeg Police said they are aware of the incident and are reviewing it by the Professional Standards Unit. Zubina Ahmed, CBC News, Winnipeg.
An embattled Winnipeg school trustee has been suspended for the third time. It's alleged she made a racist comment online. The Louis Riel School Division the board handed down a 3-month suspension to trustee Francine Champagne Tuesday. Chairperson Sandy Nemeth says the board found Champagne's comments breached its code of conduct on abusive or denigrating language. Champagne is currently on a 1-month suspension for failing to sign the code of conduct, which is required annually. She was previously suspended for comments about the LGBTQ community. 3 months is the maximum suspension possible under the Public Schools Act. Nemeth says the board will continue to suspend Champagne if she continues with these actions.
This is just not cool. Like, it's just not. There's so much wrong with what she's doing, and that's what we want our community to hear, is that we have their backs, and this is just not who we are in Louis Riel, and we will not tolerate it. She's in the situation she is because of choices that she's made, and we have an obligation and a duty to uphold that, and as I said, we'll continue to do it.
Nemeth says the board is unable to remove a trustee because she was elected by voters and there's no provision in the Public Schools Act that allows removal. However, Education Minister Nello Altamar says to CBC that an independent adjudicator has now been appointed in this case. Champagne has not responded to CBC's request for comment. For more on what she said, visit our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba. The province wants more kids to get their seasonal flu shots. Manitoba Public Health is worried about a repeat of last year, when Children's Hospital was overrun by a spike in flu cases. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, there is still time to roll up your sleeve.
Andy Bloom left this Osborne Village vaccine clinic better protected against new strains of COVID-19. He previously got his seasonal flu shot, and about a month ago, his 11-year-old daughter got immunized against both COVID and influenza.
Yeah, she got the COVID and the flu shot at the same time, and I kind of sprung it up on her. It was on a day off she had, so I was like, hey, let's go.
Bloom says she braved it out, but right now uptake among Manitoba children is lagging, and the province hopes more parents and caregivers take kids to get vaccinated to help protect the healthcare system.
We're going to very likely be in for a significant respiratory virus season, and now is the time for us to prepare.
Last year at this time, Children's Hospital was struggling to keep up with a spike in influenza cases. Chief Provincial Public Health Officer Dr. Brent Rusin says those under 5 are at highest risk of a severe outcome. He says kids 6 months and up should get their shots now before healthcare facilities get overrun again.
If we compare it to last year, still relatively similar, but we saw a very early respiratory virus season last year, and that was driving a lot of uptake. And so by the end of last year, we got up to about 20% in those age groups.
As of October 28th, only 3.3% of Manitoba children 4 years old and younger had received their flu shot. Just 3% of kids 5 to 17 have their flu vaccine.
Obviously, no one likes to go get a shot, but I mean, she understands that it's important, so she was okay with it.
The vaccine clinic at this Osborne Village Shoppers Drug Mart has been giving between 200 and 400 injections per day. The clinic is seeing more adults than kids. Bloom suspects some people may be feeling a lack of urgency.
Flu shot uptake has never been really that high, and so it's not on a lot of people's radar with COVID. Unfortunately, the messaging is not really there anymore.
Rusin says there will be more messaging as the province heads into flu season, and regardless of how many COVID shots you've had, he's encouraging everyone older than 6 months to get the latest version of the vaccine. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Winnipeg.
More than 10,000 military service members have been laid to rest in the Field of Honor at Brookside Cemetery. Now, that cemetery on Notre Dame Avenue is being recognized as a National Historic Site. In total, more than 100,000 people have been buried at Brookside since 1878. Among them, Winnipeg's first mayor, Francis E. Cornish, Sergeant Tommy Prince, one of Canada's most decorated Indigenous war veterans, and Lieutenant Harry Colburn. He's the Canadian Army veterinarian who gave his pet black bear to the London Zoo while he served in France. That bear inspired the Winnie the Pooh stories. A week after asking the federal government to remove the carbon tax from natural gas home heating, Premier Wab Kinew shared a podium today with the federal finance minister. If there's tension over the tax, the two politicians are not talking about it. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Yeah, no, I was just welcoming the Deputy Prime Minister and thank you.
A photo op in the Premier's office for Federal Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland here in Manitoba to meet with Wab Kinew only days after he asked Ottawa to remove the carbon tax from natural gas home heating.
Onward.
When the two leaders shared a podium this morning, they weren't interested in fielding questions about Manitoba's request for relief from the troubled federal tax.
I am absolutely convinced that we share the same values. We share the same priorities.
The contents of a preliminary meeting that the Finance Minister and I have together are going to remain between us.
What the two leaders would discuss is $476 million for a pair of Manitoba hydro projects. One involves upgrades to the Pointe du Bois generating station on the Winnipeg River. It started producing power in 1911. The second project is a new transmission line across southern Manitoba. This could reduce Hydro's reliance on its last natural gas-fired power plant in Brandon. The upgrades at Pointe du Bois would add 52 megawatts of power to Hydro's generating capacity. Now, 52 megawatts of power is significant, but it's a drop in the bucket compared to what Hydro wants to add to its generating capacity. Hydro is looking at doubling or even tripling it by the 2040s, from 6,600 megawatts right now to 10,000 or even 16,000 megawatts. Demand for electricity is rising because fossil fuels are on the way out. Hydro hopes wind power will meet this demand. That, in turn, will require billions to be spent on transmission lines.
There are going to be significant costs associated with the energy transition, right? Meeting our new capacity needs, investing in that new transmission.
At the same time, the NDP government wants Hydro to wean itself off fossil fuels. Hydro CEO Jay Graywall says that won't be easy.
Manitoba Hydro believes in net zero. The challenge is, can we get there by 2035?
Graywall says Hydro may continue to use the Brandon gas plant for a while or rely on what she calls renewable natural gas, which means burning methane from landfills or organic waste. Energy experts urge Manitoba to come up with a more detailed, concrete plan to create more power. Bart Lekivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
It's one of the most difficult jobs in the Manitoba legislature, keeping MLAs in line. As CBC's Ian Fraser reports, the new Speaker of the House says it's a job he never thought he'd have.
As is tradition, Tom Lindsay, the new Speaker of the House, feigns reluctance while dragged to his new job.
It's a little bit still in disbelief that I've got to be the Speaker. It's a huge honor.
Escorted by Premier Wabkanu and official opposition Deputy Leader Kelvin Gertson, Lindsay got some new temporary attire, even if not everything fit. Then he took his seat. He was acclaimed Thursday as Speaker since he was the only nominee.
I wish to thank the members for the high honor the House has conferred on me.
First elected in 2016, the former mine worker and union activist has been a vocal advocate for the North.
When will this minister admit the real damage done by the PC cuts?
The NDP MLA says his biggest challenge now, shedding his partisanship.
It's not been my forte in the world.
Lindsay says they'll change as Speaker. He must maintain order and ensure the rules and procedures of the House are followed. Easier said than done. Former Speaker Myrna Dreger reprimanded her colleagues often.
When I can't hear answers and I can't hear questions, then we have a problem.
Dreger offered some parting words before bidding farewell.
You find your own pace, you find your own style, and
they're surrounded by good staff, so that makes a difference as well.
Lindsay is hoping for civility in the legislature. He's giving the MLAs a chance.
I'm not about to start drawing lines in the sand and saying, you have to do this, you have to do that. I mean, I want to give people the opportunity to be decent, kind, loving people, and then if they don't, then I guess then the Speaker steps in.
He'll wear his new robes and hat in a week and a half when the new NDP government delivers its throne speech. Ian Fraser, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The province is giving Festival du Voyageur a one-time grant, $50,000 for structural work at Fort Gibraltar. The existing wooden walls surrounding the fort are being replaced with temporary fencing, which will then serve as the backdrop to art installations and cultural displays during February's festival. Part of a raised walkway at the fort collapsed last May when a school group was walking on it. Festival's executive director says the $50,000 will help ensure the upcoming winter carnival can go ahead safely.
Demolition work has started on November 1st, and we're anticipating that it'll be done by December 1st. And by the end of the construction, there will be a new temporary 8-foot wood fence surrounding the fort. So it won't be to the magnitude of what the fort walls were before, but there will be a fence in place to ensure the security of the site.
Brianne Lavalley-Heckart says the work will cost closer to $100,000. Staff are looking at ways to raise money to cover the additional costs. Festival du Voyageur begins February 16th. Former patients are among those mourning a Winnipeg doctor who treated people with HIV/AIDS when few others would. He died with medical assistance 2 days ago after a battle with cancer. CBC's Bryce Hoy has more.
It was the 1980s. Gay and bisexual men were dying of HIV/AIDS. That includes many of Dr. Dick Smith's patients. Jim Kane survived.
And Dr. Smith was the doctor that treated me for HIV. And he did more than that, though. He treated the whole community.
Patients and colleagues call Dr. Smith a trailblazer and gay hero who had a large impact on LGBTQ healthcare.
We started this gay men's discussion group.
Dr. Smith spoke to CBC News as he prepared to die with medical assistance this week. The 80-year-old had pancreatic cancer. He also had a message for all.
My biggest thing that I want people to really get a grip on is that no minority of any kind is ever safe. Be aware that everything that has been achieved could be taken away in a single election.
He came to Manitoba from England in 1972, a few years after med school.
Whether it was internalized homophobia or whether it was a genuine shunning while I was in medical school, I had a very emotionally traumatic time. And from that, I think gave my tenacity not to give up on this job.
He met his husband, Doug Arell. They came out together, spent 46 years side by side, fighting for LGBTQ rights. Smith took part in the gay liberation movement in San Francisco. He helped HIV/AIDS patients through the epidemic in the 1980s and 90s when many other doctors feared the virus. Kane credits Smith with inspiring him to open up about being gay and about his HIV status.
I always remember Dr. Smith doing educational seminars for healthcare professionals with some of his colleagues so that he could reduce that stigma.
Dr. Smith dedicated his career, over half a century long, to providing healthcare in the LGBTQ community. Our Own Health Clinic behind me is part of that legacy.
I think he's looking over the rainbow at us.
Pharmacist Roger Tam has worked at Our Own Health Center for over a decade. In one of their final visits, Smith wore his Order of Manitoba medal, a symbol of all he did for his patients, like Tam. Smith treated him after he was assaulted about 3 decades ago.
And Dr. Smith was my savior. I went there and he embraced me, and it was nice to have a grandfather kind of figure to help me through my journey of rediscovery and being myself.
And the clinic hopes to continue that legacy of care in honor of Dr. Smith. Bryce Hoy, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meteorologist John Sauter joins us now. You know, I got to tell you, John, when we opened that door this morning, the dog was not happy to see the snow that was down.
Some dogs love the snow.
I know.
Yeah, they run around and they have fun.
And they pile it on their nose. Well,
not so much.
I have a pug. He doesn't have a nose, so maybe that's it. How much snow did we get?
Well, we were calling for 5 and then maybe another 2 early this morning, and it's pretty close to that. Here's a look at, well, first of all, what it kind of looked like last night outside, but let's bring in some snowfall amounts here. Winnipeg, between 5 and 8 centimeters. White Shell out to the east was pretty close to that. Same with Portage to the west, 5.6 in Morris, and Pinawa at 9.7 centimeters, and that's up to about 8 o'clock this morning. So some of these areas picked up a little bit more after that time. Now, right now we are at -1. Temperature's been within about a half a degree all day today, between -0.5 and -1.0. But right now, -1, north winds at 22, so they're a little bit quieter than they were earlier and will continue to drop off into the overnight period. Not much left on radar. Now, the low is out to the east of us, and the counterclockwise circulation around that low brings these flurries down from the north to the south. So we still have a few little returns here on radar. That's the moving stuff that you see. The gray in behind it, that's the cloud cover that's just kind of hanging over us. You know, it's been since Friday last week since we've had a sunny day, and there is a chance we'll see a little break in the cloud perhaps tomorrow. I don't think so in the morning. It's a hint here, but this is a forecast model, and as we get into the afternoon, it's suggesting that there is some clearing, certainly out to the west in Saskatchewan, and some thinning of the cloud, but the real clearing starts to happen Friday night into Saturday morning. Saturday, Remembrance Day, and I think that we'll wake up to temperatures that are at about a -5. If you're going to an outdoor ceremony, you may be standing in snow, and you likely will be, and temperature at that time, around 10:30 or so, would be about a -3, and it'll be breezy, 15 to 30 out of the southeast. This is what the afternoon looks like, just as the Bombers are kind of getting ready to take on the Lions. That starts at 5:30, so that'll also be at around -3. And then we get into Sunday. Another system moves in with some snow to the north and a real mix to the south here. We'll probably see some wet flurries early in the morning. I want to show you this once again because as we head through time here and through the weekend into Monday, we've got a real ridge of high pressure in the eastern and western prairies that will bring in some snow-eating type temperatures. Yeah, 5s and 7s into early next week. -4 though tonight, so streets in the city have been wet mostly, but bridges may start to freeze up late evening as we get into that -3, -4 range. There's your morning temperature. Couple of breaks in the cloud, a little better chance of that in the afternoon at -1, winds light on Friday afternoon. And then going forward, we start to see temperatures above 0, cloudy with a few wet flurries, 4 degrees Sunday, sun cloud mix 5 on Monday. Janet, even warmer on Tuesday.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
We'll check in with you a little later. A Canadian mixed martial arts superstar surprised students at Lake St. Martin First Nation School yesterday. Ultimate fighting champion George St-Pierre was invited to the community by the chief and council. Some members of Lake St. Martin lost their ancestral homes in the 2011 flood of the Assiniboine River, as you may remember. As CBC's Jim Agapito reports, community leaders hope the welterweights champion's story will uplift the youth.
Lake St. Martin First Nation School has a special surprise today to uplift the youth, and he's a mixed martial arts legend.
Make sure you have a goal, dream big, work hard, and everything is possible. You can do it, all right? Thank you again.
Why was this an important thing for you to come to this community and do this talk?
Well, it reminds me to the importance of life, you know, like to be able to talk to the youth, you know, the young people, you know, that sometimes needs a little bit of motivation, you know what I mean, to do the right thing. You know, sometimes when you have a goal and you try to obtain it, it doesn't come by itself, you know, you need to do the sacrifice, the hard work, mind over matter, you know what I mean, like a lot of I feel sometimes the younger generation, they need a little bit of motivation to, you know, to get things going, and that's what I'm trying to do here, you know, to try to motivate them, to give them the energy to do the hard work.
And you came from, you know, a small community, probably much like this. So growing up, I've got to ask, you know, how does that relate to then the challenges that you faced? You faced bullying, all sorts of stuff. I'm curious, and how it relates to them and to motivate them, like.
Yeah, I mean, when I was young, I was victim of bullying, and I was a different kid, and I started doing martial art, and I gained confidence over it, and it changes me from the inside out, and maybe the man that I am. And you know, I try to pass down my knowledge, sometimes help the kids that are in similar situation to improve.
And you heard probably a little bit about their story, you know, the floods definitely displaced the people. Yeah. It caused, you know, some of the youth, and they're looking for, you know, I don't know if they're looking for role models, but people with positive light. So when you were told that you might be able to come and give them the talk and motivate them, what was your impressions of that?
Yeah, I was very happy to have the opportunity, and yeah, it's tough obstacle that the people here had to overcome. But you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I think it makes them stronger because now they overcome that obstacle. Now there's nothing as bad maybe they're gonna face next, you know, like, so you always cross our fingers and hope for the best. But I mean, now they're ready, they overcome this, they can do everything they want in life, so they have the strength to go over this. Now everything is possible.
And when you saw the smiles on their faces, everyone wanted a picture. You were very gracious. You gave that to them. What does that do for you to know that you're touching, you know, some of the community members here?
Well, for me, it's part of my duties, or in a way, because I work in the entertainment business and I try to inspire people, and it's part of my job. And it takes for me sometimes 30 seconds to meet someone and talk to him, but he's going to remember maybe for a very long time. So if I can help someone, I'll always want to do it, Well, I would like to say to the community, Anin Obasco Dehan, thank you very much for having me here. It was a lot of fun, and I hope I'll get a chance to come back.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The United States says Israel has agreed to daily humanitarian pauses in its military campaign on Gaza. The goal would be to help people flee Gaza and also for aid to get in. We'll have more from the region after the break. The U.S. says Israel has agreed to daily humanitarian pauses in its military campaign on Gaza. The goal is to ease the dire conditions in Gaza by letting help in and possibly assist Israeli hostages if they're released. Today, though, as Ellen Morrow reports, there was little comfort on either side. A warning, images in the story could be disturbing.
From Gaza, a new propaganda video released by Hamas ally Islamic Jihad. This woman identifies herself as one of the hostages taken in the October 7th attacks and criticizes Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's not clear where or when the video was filmed or the circumstances behind it. A video of another hostage, a 13-year-old boy, was also released. Everyday anguish over the fate of the hostages grows. Some 240 people held for over a month. Kites saying "bring them home" with some of their names on them are flown over Tel Aviv. Those here trying to hold on to hope.
We are concerned and we want them back.
Connie Megan's close friend Agam is one of the hostages.
She is the most funny, most intelligent, most happy person ever. She's just a big sunshine. It's horrible. It's just a big hole in our community.
There are reports of high-level negotiations to free about a dozen hostages in exchange for a days-long pause in the war. But for those here, there won't be any comfort until their loved ones are home. In northern Gaza, the White House says Israel has agreed to implement 4-hour daily pauses in the fighting. Israel describes them as tactical, local pauses for humanitarian aid. In recent days, tens of thousands have fled the heaviest fighting in the north of Gaza on an evacuation route opened by the Israeli military, carrying all they can, waving white flags. This is where so many of them end up, an overcrowded tent city in the south, mired in uncertainty.
I don't know if I'm gonna live until tomorrow or not. I don't know if my cousin, my niece, my children, I don't know if anybody's gonna come out of this.
With a lack of sanitation and water here, the World Health Organization is now warning of widespread infectious diseases. And despite Israel's military saying the south is safer for civilians, airstrikes there continue.
We are calling for a situation, not only a ceasefire, but a solution for the circumstances that we are living and having these days.
But Israel says there won't be any ceasefire until all the hostages are released and Hamas is defeated. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Police in Montreal are investigating after shots were fired at 2 Jewish schools overnight. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau condemned any acts of anti-Semitism, and Quebec's Premier François Legault says such incidents cannot be tolerated. Staff members discovered bullet holes on the exterior of the buildings this morning when they arrived. Police say no one was inside at the time of the shootings, but it's unclear when the shots were fired, and they can't confirm the 2 incidents are linked. Concordia University has stepped up security, and an investigation is underway after a violent clash between 2 groups of students on campus yesterday. Sharon Yonan-Reynolds has the latest on the fallout.
After tensions escalated to a physical altercation yesterday, some students say the shock is still settling in.
It was very scary to think that it could reach my local university, where many people are expected to be protected by staff and by the university itself.
Students say it started here, where 2 tables were set up, one raising funds for Gaza, the other one raising awareness about the Israeli hostages held by Hamas. Police say 3 people were injured and 1 person arrested. Political condemnation has been swift.
We're asking the SPVM to be vigilant about this situation, and we hope that the official of these university will assure that all students are secure.
We need to remain calm. I trust the rectors, the principals of the institutions to make sure everything stays calm on campus.
Though security appeared on high alert, it's not enough to reassure some students.
I feel like the tensions won't go away, and it does create a sense of unsafety on campus because they never know you don't know what to expect.
CBC reached out to Concordia multiple times for an interview. Instead, we were directed to a statement posted by the school's president yesterday. In it, he says that both Jewish and Muslim community members have reported provocative comments and fears for their security on campus. He also says the school will continue to meet with student groups to remind them of the importance of maintaining calm and treating each other with respect. He says the school will work to identify and bring those responsible for yesterday's incident to account. Some students say the school needs to do more to keep tensions from escalating.
Maybe reviewing when it comes to events, the placements of the events, the time frames of the events. I don't think the location of these two different events happening at the same time right next to each other was the wisest choice.
She hopes further escalations at the school don't happen so all students can continue their studies in peace. Sharon Yonan-Reynolds, CBC News, Montreal.
The Trudeau government tabled anti-replacement worker legislation today, fulfilling a key demand by the NDP.
Bill C-58 will ban the use of replacement workers in federally regulated industries during a strike or a lockout. That means no new contractors, no members of the bargaining unit crossing the picket line. The penalty for violating the ban would be $100,000 per day.
Now, once this passes, it would apply to federally regulated private sector businesses like crown corporations, banking, telecom, ports, and airports. The legislation will allow for some exceptions, such as replacing workers to prevent threats to health and safety or damage to property or the environment. Now, you've likely heard the term shrinkflation. It's when companies shrink food products but maybe keep the price the same. You might not be aware of a similar practice called skimpflation happening in your grocery store. We'll show you how after the break. Okay, so you've likely heard of shrinkflation, when companies shrink food products. They just get smaller. But you might not be aware of a similar practice called skimpflation. That's when companies change food recipes and leave some shoppers feeling they're getting less. CBC's Sophia Harris explains.
Granola. You might remember them from your youth. Quaker Dips granola bars.
Dipped in delicious real milk chocolate.
But the Dips bars are no longer covered in milk chocolate. Instead, it's a chocolatey coating with palm oil, and it's not real chocolate.
It appears that they've used palm oil to get similar texture and quality of the chocolate, but it doesn't meet the standard of identity in Canada.
Why do you think the company may have made this change?
It could be a cost-saving measure. So we know that cocoa ingredients tend to be more expensive than other products like vegetable oil, especially palm oil.
When food companies swap out ingredients for cheaper alternatives but don't lower the price, it's known as skimpflation.
It's really an unknown, sneaky way to give you less for your money.
The old and current Dips packaging look very similar, but only the old box says the bars are made with real milk chocolate.
The new package actually doesn't contain real milk chocolate anymore.
Some people who buy Dips bars didn't know about the change.
I think it's just a deception technique that they're looking for, getting a cheaper product out there. Are you going to buy this bar anymore?
Now that you've pointed this out, I probably won't.
I think because of inflation, we're seeing more examples of skimpflation.
This U.S.-based consumer advocate posts online apparent examples of skimpflation, like this wishbone salad dressing sold in U.S. stores and on Amazon in Canada.
The one on the left has more oil in it, so they took out some of the oil and they seemingly replaced it with water and salt. That saved them money.
Carbohydrates, protein.
Companies are required to list ingredients on food labels. This registered dietitian says they should also have to alert customers when they make recipe changes.
I think it comes down to clearly communicating to consumers so that they can make informed decisions.
The companies that make the bars and the salad dressing did not respond to requests for comment. Last month, the federal government said it will investigate skimpflation, but it has no action plan as of yet. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
The 2023 sea turtle nesting season is one for the record books in Florida, but scientists fear even with the rise in numbers, climate change is placing sea turtles under further threat. Thousands of nests of the endangered species dot the coastlines of Florida, containing loggerheads, green turtles, and leatherbacks. While scientists celebrate this year's increase, they are worried climate change is affecting the natural ratio of male to female turtles. If the sand is too hot, the eggs cannot survive. And the temperature of the sand also determines the sex of the hatchling. Researchers say more females are being born than males because of the extreme heat.
Weather Update is brought to you by the art and beauty of the National Ballet of Ukraine. January 29th at the Burton Cummings Theatre. Tickets at nationalballetukraine.com.
Do you find when the little itty-bitty turtles are going toward the water on the beach, you're sort of cheering for them?
Totally cheering for them. Go! The seagulls are coming. The seagulls. Oh, not to blame the seagulls.
Yeah,
but,
we need some sand on some of the streets and highways.
Oh, yes, but not because it's summer.
Right.
No, it's because it's slippery.
This is a picture on Facebook from the Canadian Highways Network, the Manitoba division. This is Highway 3 at 5 o'clock this afternoon near Morden. So there are many highways like that across the southern part of the province tonight. So, yeah, just need to really slow down and be careful. The person who posted that said that they're moving at about 60 kilometers per hour, and that's it on the highway. Temperatures all within a degree of 0. So we've got a 0 over here in Morris, -1 in Winnipeg at the airport and at the Forks, -2 in Selkirk and -1 in Steinbach. And that consistent number is right across southern Manitoba and out into northwestern Ontario. -3s across the Swan River, Barons River, Red Lake belt. And then up to the north, we certainly do cool off a little bit. Current numbers in the -9, -10 range in the far north, including Thompson and Churchill. Boy, lots of cloud cover. Not much going on for sunshine here in the last 6 days, I think, now. And tonight, as we look at some evening snow changing to flurries for Dryden, probably a few evening flurries as well around Red Lake, just cloudy and -4 for an overnight low in through Kenora. We have a few evening flurries here, and this is what's left of the snow that is circulating out from the north to the south in behind this departing system. Gimli, a few flurries as well, but we'll see that wrap up as we head into the later evening, and then just cloudy skies overnight. Across the north, some patchy fog around Lynn Lake, and I think there's a chance around Thompson. Otherwise, some evening flurries. Could see freezing drizzle around Flin Flon and the Paw. And then tomorrow, some sun, some cloud, a little bit cloudier around Churchill and around Flin Flon, but boy, temperatures still in the plus side here. Norway House and the Paw, -2 in Thompson, -1 in Lynn Lake, and -4 under cloudy skies in Churchill tomorrow. And we'll see varying amounts of sun and cloud here across southern Manitoba. Another day with temperatures right around the seasonal normal. We're at 0 for a normal now in Winnipeg, and tomorrow will be right around -1, some afternoon sunny breaks, and this looks a little brighter than I think it will be. Let's call it mainly cloudy with sunny breaks and generally overcast skies tomorrow for northwestern Ontario, and highs of -1 to -2.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Retired Lieutenant General and former Canadian Senator Romeo Dallaire is in Winnipeg. He's giving a lecture on how not to lose sight of humanity during conflicts. More of his wisdom after the break. He is now recognized as a peace advocate and a humanitarian. Former Canadian Senator Romeo Dallaire is in Winnipeg. The retired Lieutenant General gave a lecture at the University of Manitoba, focusing on ethical leadership during a crisis and how not to lose sight of humanity during conflicts. The CBC's Matt Humphrey had the chance to speak with Dallaire. Here's a part of their conversation.
Lecture today is titled Peace, Faith, and Humanity in Times of Crisis. Why was that a message you wanted to share now, particularly?
All the more in trying to bring people to realize that we're doing very little to try to prevent much of the suffering and the conflicts, the sources of these conflicts. Why what we think is peace really only truces, and why are we continuing to let the civilian population, and particularly women and really particularly children, being massively abused in their human rights, and we're seeing extensive destruction of societies that are trying to make their way through a complex era in which we've sort of all stumbled into, particularly now that we've reverted back to nearly 1946 with Ukraine and the return of a sort of a Cold War scenario.
And what's going through your mind as you're seeing these conflicts unfold?
Well, apart from really pissing me off, the fact that we are actually not trying to move the yardsticks forward, but very rapidly by self-interest dominating the decision-making of the political leadership of the world, they have become so risk-averse is that they will go there to maybe support somebody who's going to through traumas and crisis, but not engage. We don't see a scream for real lasting peace. We don't see an engagement. We don't see anymore a desire to get ahead of the game to prevent generational wars from happening. On the contrary, we're sort of nurturing generational wars, particularly by the impact that it's having on children who are going to become adults, and that's all they're going to know, and they're going to grow up mad and with all kinds of evil sort of references of what happened to them and their families, and so we're just going to perpetuate versus trying to solve.
And why do you think we aren't seeing that cry for peace that you touched on?
That's the sort of realm of how materialistic and how the sort of the nation state and all the parameters of that, from nationalism to sovereignty to also the divisions created even within countries, but like racism and religious and economic differences. All those parameters are creating a pecking order in humanity. And so we've lost the sense that all humans are human, and that not one human is more human than the other. We're all actually equal.
Winnipeg, our city, is home to the Canadian Museum for Human Rights.
No kidding.
Why are institutions like that important in your mind, and what can we learn from the past when examining situations and crises today?
You got to really worry about the concept of learning from the past, because we tend to learn from people who have been before us to sort of perfect ourselves and become better at it. Well, the past has, since Westphalia, which is over 300 years ago, we're learning on how to handle truces. We're not learning on how to prevent catastrophic destruction of humanity. We're learning how to handle truces. And we've come to the point where we don't want to risk our own to save human beings. And we've set that pecking order. So in fact, I think that the importance of talking about it here, in this place, and having an institution like that is not just to show how catastrophic we were in the past and sort of see how we've handled that and come out of it in a sort of a somewhat equilibrium until somebody flares it up again. But in fact, how do you leap ahead from that past into the future? And that's, I've never visited, I've helped fund it, but I've never visited it, and I'm going to do that tomorrow. And I hope that we see people wanting to leap ahead in prevention to create lasting peace than simply trying to adjust and fiddle with the methodologies of the past.
Romeo Dallaire visiting Winnipeg. Here's what the streets of our city look like this morning. Coming up, meteorologist John Sauter will show you what next week will look like in your 7-day forecast. We'll also bring you your daily lift, so stay with us.
When it comes to your news, you want up-to-the-minute access. Anytime, anywhere. Get the facts straight from the source. Download the free CBC News app or visit cbcnews.ca for news you can trust.
Okay, the Western Final happens in Winnipeg on Saturday. Now, if you look at the temperature and think, oh, a high of 0, it's going to be quite nice. Well, by game time, it's -3. Same temperature at halftime. Wind will also play a factor here. And it's kind of damp out there. So dress for something much, much warmer than 0 and -3. Here is the long-range forecast. And we've got temperatures that are warming up second half of the weekend. Could see some wet flurries on Sunday morning. Then look what happens. Snow-eating temperatures, 5s and 7s right through next week. You know, there are plenty of stories about porch pirates, people who scoop up parcels delivered to other people's homes.
Terrible. Well, in this case, the culprit is pretty bold and had everyone talking. Here's your Daily Lift. Florida family does what you've probably done many times, order some food, house in Orlando, lucky them. Delivery person leaves, it takes about, oh no, what's happening? This happens. A bear just saunters over, grabs the food, saunters away. Security cameras then capture the poor, hungry family repeatedly saying, the bear took the food.
Yeah.
The bear took the food in Spanish.
Ranger ain't gonna like it, Yogi.
Yeah, right? That's what I thought too. Picnic basket. Oh,
Well,
look, a picnic basket.
There must have been some honey in there or something. Right?
Probably, right? Good sense of smell. Have a wonderful evening.
Good night.
Night.